Greetings everyone. This is a quick promo before the video begins. If you're new to the channel and you didn't know it yet, I am actually an author in addition to being a YouTuber, and I have 2 books that you can get on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1 and The Occult Mafia. The first is sort of a bizarre, absurdist kaiju anime mashup, and the other is a horror noir story with a hint of a western thrown in there. They're both set in the same universe, and at this point have received mostly positive reviews, so you might want to check them out. I've provided Amazon links for both of them down in the description. They're both available in either paperback or Amazon Kindle, and Operation Red Dragon is also available in audiobook form. So if either of these strike your fancy and you want to support a struggling artist, feel free to go down and check out either one or both of them. Alright, the shameless self-promotion is out of the way, we can get on with the video. Thank you all for your support. Hail, war brothers and sisters! I am Lieutenant Omnius, commander of the 1st Division Titanus Space Marines. Or at least I will be once I finally start collecting Warhammer 40,000 miniatures in earnest.
I must confess that though Warhammer 40,000 has been on my radar for some time, I've never really known much about it beyond the fact that it exists and is popular. It's only in recent years that I've started really getting into it and its sister series Warhammer Fantasy. Now that I am into it, I regret not joining in on this phenomenon sooner.
Actually, it's probably a good thing I didn't get involved sooner because it's a really expensive hobby to maintain. But I'm looking for deals wherever I can find them.
If I'm being perfectly honest, I find myself mostly drawn to the lizard men, now called the Seraphon, because they have dinosaurs and dinosaurs are cool. But I realize that they're part of the fantasy branch, and that's not what we're talking about today.
Rather, our subject today is the first and so far only Warhammer 40k movie, simply entitled Ultramarines.
I first saw this movie way back when all I knew about the game was the title, and I figured it might help me determine if it was something I wanted to get into.
That turned out to be a huge mistake for reasons I'll get into later. But since I'm now really starting to get into the game, I figured I'd check the movie out again now that I have a bit more knowledge of what I'm looking at.
The premise is fairly straightforward. Mithron, a stronghold of mankind since the dawn of the Imperium, has suffered some kind of attack, which is especially bad news because the Imperial Fists guard a sacred codex there.
I'm just going to pause the summary for a moment and say that if you're not familiar with the game and none of that made any sense to you, don't worry, it didn't make sense to me at first either.
Anyway, a signal beacon on the planet is still calling for assistance, and the closest division that's able to help is Ultima Squad, comprised of a dozen newly minted Ultramarines. They may be few in number, but they are mighty in spirit, and they are determined to answer the beacon, retrieve the codex, and slaughter whatever foes stand in their way.
Like I said, my first viewing of this film was through the eyes of someone who had never experienced Warhammer in any capacity. I also said that was a mistake on my part.
You see, Ultramarines was made specifically for the established fans, so it assumes that you're already well versed in the Warhammer mythology. An outsider like me was guaranteed to not know a darn thing. Why do all of these soldiers look like variations of the same dude? What is this warp everyone is so worried about? Who or what is Macragge? Where does that demon thing come from? Why is everyone referring to the Emperor as a god, and who is the Emperor? What's the deal with Chaos Space Marines? If you don't know the answers when you start the movie, you won't know them by the end because you're already supposed to know them.
No joke, you'll get more information about the Warhammer 40k setting by watching Event Horizon, and that's not even officially part of the game's lore.
That being said though, I remember that I still found the plot itself easy to follow, and it kept me engaged to the end. My assessment at the time was that Ultramarines is like Starship Troopers without the subversive irony and co-ed shower scenes. Now that I know a little bit more, has my assessment changed?
Well, I still think the story is very straightforward.
It's what gamers call a fetch quest. Go to location, get the MacGuffin, and keep the MacGuffin away from the enemy. You don't need the backstory to understand that much. Really, it's the kind of thing an average Warhammer game consists of, so I guess in that regard, Ultramarines is pretty accurate to the experience.
It's basic, yes, but it allows for a slightly more involved plot than if they'd based it on a skirmish-type game.
Of course, the bar for storytelling in this series is set incredibly high given the volume of material that already exists, and this doesn't quite match the dramatic levels of something like the Horus Heresy. Ultramarines does contain hints of deeper storytelling, such as implying that the older veteran soldiers have a certain degree of shell shock, but very little comes of these additions.
So Ultramarines isn't an example of great storytelling, nor is it an example of terrible storytelling. It's very middle of the road, and at just under 77 minutes, it doesn't overstay its welcome.
The plot may be nothing special, but the attention to detail is astounding. That should come as no surprise, really, given that attention to detail is part of the game's appeal. The planet Mithron isn't much to look at, admittedly, but the characters, vehicles, and structures are all lovingly rendered to look as good as they possibly can.
Well, I should say it looks as good as it possibly can, given the budgetary restraints. This wasn't made with Disney money. It's a low-budget feature, and the visuals are affected.
The animation can be a bit janky at times, shadows and camera angles can make the action hard to see, and everything looks like it's made of plastic. But then again, the actual minis really are made of plastic, so maybe that part was deliberate. Overall, it doesn't look as good as the Warhammer video game footage I've seen, but it's not an eyesore. On a scale of Pixar to first time using Blender, it once again falls somewhere in the middle.
But once you get past that, you can tell that everything in the movie was crafted with as much care and attention to detail as the physical models are.
Even though the characters all share the same base design, since Space Marines are genetically engineered, finer details are added to make them look different. Scars, hairstyles, age, voices, and finer details on the armor are all implemented to make the characters feel like individuals.
That being said, it doesn't quite work as well as it could have.
Even with these visual differences, the characters have a tendency to blend together. By the end, only 2 soldiers, maybe 3, have survived, but I didn't feel any particular relief that they survived, nor did I feel upset when their comrades died.
However, as an analytically minded new fan who's just diving into this universe and learning the ropes, I can't rule out the possibility that this was intentional.
Maybe this lack of weight to character deaths is connected to the grim atmosphere, where a life of only war means you don't get attached or take time to mourn, and this is just the way things are in the 41st millennium. Then again, it may also just be simplistic writing. I guess that's open to interpretation.
In the end, I would say that Ultramarines is an average movie. One of those rare examples where the good elements and the bad elements balance each other out exactly.
I am, of course, saying this as a newcomer who doesn't have a lifelong attachment to the series, so I may not be as familiar with elements that might improve or detract from the experience. It's possible I missed a lot that would affect my opinion. I do know of some fans who hate this picture. Then again, if this is considered bad storytelling in the Warhammer community, then I can't wait to get my hands on the good stuff.
But then again, that's just where I stand as a new fan. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got an army to build. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni viewer signing off. So is there any rule saying you can't mix Warhammer Fantasy with Warhammer 40k? I guess that's one more thing I'll find out eventually.
If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Like and subscribe, then go down to the description to find links to follow us on DeviantArt, Patreon, and Twitter. While you're there, you'll also find the Amazon links for the original novels Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, and The Occult Mafia. 2 books I think you'll really enjoy. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.